Jeffrey Epstein's ex-girlfriend speaking out tonight. Stacey Williams, a former Sports Illustrated model who dated Epstein in the early 90s, has spent time with both Epstein and Donald Trump together. In one disturbing alleged incident, which Williams went public with last year before the presidential election, Williams says Trump groped her in front of Epstein at Trump Tower in 1993. Here's what she told our Sunland Serfati when she first broke her silence.
The second he was in front of me, he pulled me into him, and his hands were just on me and didn't come off. Then the hands started moving, and they were on the, on the side of my breasts, on my hips, back down to my butt, back up, sort of. Then, they were just on me the whole time. And I froze.
Williams also claimed that Epstein and Trump looked at each other and smiled during the alleged incident, which Williams says she now believes was coordinated and, quote, some kind of weird, twisted game. Trump denied Williams's allegations through his campaign at the time, which said in part, quote, it's obvious this fake story was contrived by Kamala Harris's campaign. And Stacey Williams is out front now to speak out for the first time since the uproar over Trump's handling of the Epstein case. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As you know, Epstein is dominating the news once again, and his relationship with Trump is under scrutiny. While you were dating Epstein, can you tell us how close these two men were?
They were best friends. I dated Jeffrey for a period of more or less, I think about 4 or 5 months. And the only friend that he would mention every time we saw each other or had a phone conversation was Donald, and he would share a lot of anecdotes. I have plenty of anecdotes. And yeah, they were very close, and they were up to no good.
And how did Epstein talk about Trump? Sort of what was the quality of those anecdotes and how he described him?
Well, there was a time when he mentioned that he had to check in on him because he was unwell and very upset about something that had happened. I remember because he was late to pick me up, and he was explaining why he was late. They were just, it was such a long time ago, but it was just that was his bro, that was his wingman. It was clearly, I'd hear about Ghislaine and I'd hear about Jeffrey. And I met Ghislaine in his house. She would come wafting in and out, the home in New York. So he was clearly just someone that he talked about all the time. And again, I met Jeffrey the second time, and we started dating based on the reintroduction that happened at the Plaza Hotel at a Christmas party in 1992 that Donald Trump threw. And they were very, very close.
So let's talk about this incident, alleged incident in 1993, where you say that Trump groped you in front of Epstein. I do want to note that CNN has spoken to 3 friends of yours who confirmed that you told them about this alleged incident over past decades. Can you tell me more about what happened that day, and particularly how Trump and Epstein interacted?
Yeah, and before I get into the details of what happened, which, obviously I told you guys and I've shared with multiple outlets, the specifics of the assault that happened, I want to point out that I was polygraphed before I did all this by one of the most renowned examiners in the world. Michael Wolff has hundreds of hours of interviews with Jeffrey Epstein where Jeffrey confirmed to Michael what the two of them did to me long before I came out and told you all of this. So those are 2 critical data points that you need to have, and now I'll walk you through what happened. I was dating Jeffrey. He was always talking about Donald. It was his bestie and everything, and he was joking about how Donald thought I was hot, and Donald thinks I'm this or whatever, wants to talk to you. And he was telling me this as we were taking a walk down Fifth Avenue one day. And he said, let's stop in and see him at his offices. So we went up to his office in Trump Tower, and within a couple of minutes, Donald was outside of his door, and his hands were all over me. They were on my breasts, they were on my butt, they were on, my hips, up and down, while the two of them just kept having a normal conversation. I don't remember exactly what was in the conversation. Again, this was, we're talking 90, this is 93 now. It was something about, it was irrelevant. It was like, oh, Stacey's career's on fire. She just did Sports Illustrated again, blah, 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 blah. And they were back and forth, smiling and grinning and carrying on a conversation while Donald ran his hands all over me. And when that happens in broad daylight in someone's office and an assistant's walking back and forth, you're in shock. If it happens in a dark alleyway, right, you defend yourself. But when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, which is Donald Trump's forte, you go into shock. So I froze, and it was over and very quickly. It was a few minutes, and then we got back in the elevator, and Jeffrey's energy had changed. He was like seething. He was enraged. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. And then we got out on the street on Fifth Avenue, and he looked at me and he just started yelling at me, saying, "Why did you let him do that?" And he was so enraged. And then I remember thinking, like, why did I? I felt like I was coming back into my body at that moment, and I was confused. So that's the story of the assault.
And I do just want to note, Stacey, that Trump has denied these allegations, which you are well aware of. And I know at times you've referenced videos which we have not confirmed the existence of. But I know that you felt that this was coordinated later when you looked back on it. What was it that made you draw that conclusion? Well, I was sort of known in the industry for being somewhat combative with photographers who would expose themselves or do inappropriate things, or even guys who would touch or harass on the streets. And Jeffrey was aware of that. And I think he was excited. I think the gist in my mind, given what he knew and the way it played out, was, hey, I'm going to deliver this person to you who's actually not going to let you get away with what you do. And I did, because I froze. Like I said, when it's hidden in its brazenness like that, you freeze. And, he's a master of that. So, I mean, he talked about it, right? He talked about pussy grabbing on the Access Hollywood tape. And tonight, if you're aware, President Trump has filed this libel lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal over its reporting that there was this note bearing Trump's name as a signature and an outline of a naked woman that was included in a 50th birthday album for Epstein in 2003, a note that also depicted an imaginary conversation between the two men. And part of it reads, quote, Donald saying, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do. Come to think of it, Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me that the last time I saw you." And then finally, Donald, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." Trump called that letter fake. He said it was out of character for him because he never wrote a picture or drew a picture in his life. Wrote a picture, I think he said. No, it's not his kind of language. Based on your time with both men, does that sound out of character to you?
What, are you kidding me? I know what they were up to together. It happened to me. I was polygraphed. I have the post-assault postcard with a love note. So I have the receipts. Where are Donald Trump's receipts? Where are they? I know what they're up together, and I know what that means. It's very clear. It wasn't baking or fishing.
Well, Stacy Williams, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
NBC News confirming with two sources tonight. The deputy director of the FBI, the number 2 at the Bureau, Dan Bongino, didn't report for work today. And he may be on the verge of quitting altogether after openly clashing in the White House with Attorney General Pam Bondi over her handling of the case. Now, before he got his job, Bongino was making a living doing stuff like this.
I got a big question about the Epstein files. Who's on the Epstein tapes, folks? Who's on those tapes? Who's in those black books? Why have they been hiding it?
Now Bongino is out there in a suit and tie with the FBI director and former fellow podcaster Kash Patel, trying to unwind all that conspiracy stuff. Last week, he was back on Fox promising a new video that would maybe put the story to rest.
And there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's a video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay, it was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this, we are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him.
Okay, remember that phrase, gonna give you the original so you don't think there's any shenanigans, right? So sure enough, on Monday, the DOJ released nearly 11 hours of video showing the hallway outside Epstein's cell. That was supposed to prove there were, quote, no shenanigans. But then, as journalist Julie K. Brown noted on our show this week, neither the doors shown there were even Epstein's cell. On top of that, the video was missing 1 minute of recording. Pam Bondi's attempts to explain that missing minute didn't really help convince these suspicious conspiracy theorists.
And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Okay, that's it. Done. Now, Bondi had already stepped in it with the Epstein obsesses after promising months ago that his client list was on her desk for review, then saying there was no client list this week. Her explanation, the video gap didn't help. And this report from Wired magazine today isn't going to help either. An analysis of the metadata from the video shows the footage was modified, likely using the professional editing tool Adobe Premiere Pro. In fact, they add the file appears to have been assembled from at least 2 source clips, saved multiple times, exported, and then uploaded to DOJ's website, where it was presented as raw footage. Now, Wired says there's no evidence the footage was deceptively manipulated. But again, it's not doing wonders for the White House's credibility with precisely the people in their base who are the most skeptical of this kind of thing. And again, that's at the heart of the emerging power struggle in the administration. This isn't some ancillary internet thing, okay? According to the New York Times, it erupted into an angry face-to-face confrontation at the White House on Wednesday when an irate Ms. Bondi accused Mr. Bongino of leaking information to the news media in the presence of FBI Director Kash Patel, the White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and one of her deputies. A source close to Bongino told NBC News today, Bongino is out of control furious. This destroyed his career. He's threatening to quit and torch Pam unless she's fired. And you wouldn't want to be a kettlebell in Dan Bongino's home gym on a day like today. It's a common sentiment in MAGA world today. Remember, Trump openly courted all these people, the sort of deep state conspiracy theorists, right? The voters who believe Trump's shtick, that there's some system of bad guys that's rigged against them by the elites, but he's not one, right? And that these elites patronize child sex trafficking rings, and that Epstein was at the heart of it. And this was a critical part of the MAGA coalition. Like, I honestly think the kinds of folks that are sort of believe this gave him his margin of victory. And today, these people are in rebellion.
This is the most famous pedophile in modern day history, and people are absolutely not going to accept just a memo that was written that says there is no client list.
It's not about just a pedophile ring and all that. This is about who governs us, right? For this to go away, you're going to lose 10% of the MAGA movement. If we lose 10% of the MAGA movement right now, we're going to lose 40 seats in 26.
So we're stupid.
Yeah.
we're the idiots, guys. Just to let you know, we're wasting time.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point.
That is, like, in all seriousness, that is, I think, what is enraging people right now is it's insulting our intelligence. Like, obviously, the intelligence community is trying to cover it up. Obviously, the Trump administration is trying to cover up. Something changed because they ran on this idea of exposing it all.
Yep.
Everyone in that world is mad at Bondi and Bongino and Kash Patel right now. But again, I just want to put something out there, something that we've returned to time and time again as you see Donald Trump whispering in the ear of his buddy Jeffrey Epstein as they ogle girls, women. Maybe it's the big guy at the top who has strong feelings about this. Again, you don't have to draw some crazy contorted conspiracy flowchart to try to connect Donald Trump to that guy on your screen talking to him, Jeffrey Epstein. They were friends for years. But right now, the president would really appreciate it if you all just dropped it.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
Ken Delaney is an NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent. Brandy Zadrozny is a senior MSNBC reporter. Both of them have followed the Epstein case and the MAGA reaction to the latest obfuscation from the DOJ, and they join me now. Ken, let me start with you. I mean, what we saw happen after that memo was this sort of uprising rebellion in all sorts of sort of precincts of the MAGA coalition, and also not even the MAGA coalition, just generally in social media. That seems to have reached into the very heart of the Trump administration and Justice Department. Tell us what happened today.
Yeah, that's right. And Chris, I should say, this is not the first time we've seen this kind of thing happening. There's been a lot of discontent about, for example, why isn't the Justice Department putting people in prison over Russiagate and things like that? But this is the most passionate, the most explosive issue, this Epstein situation. And what happened was Bongino and Patel, by all accounts, were on the same page. They all worked together with Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi and senior DOJ staff to craft this memo where they agreed that there was no client list, he committed suicide, there was no secret conspiracy theory. And then Bongino saw the reaction and he didn't like it at all. And now it's pushed him to the point where he, as you said, he didn't show up to work today. We've confirmed that. And he is telling people that he's contemplating resigning. And there's a larger mosaic here. Both Bongino and Patel have been frustrated with Pam Bondi. They meet with her frequently. It goes beyond the Epstein issue. There's just a clash of personalities there. And, to Bondi's credit, although she did stoke the conspiracy theories, and you reported on this before and you mentioned it today, with the client list on my desk remark, her people are now saying that she meant the Epstein files were on her desk, not the client list. She could have spent 4 years trying to string along the conspiracy theorists and say that, the files are going to be released any day now. But instead, they decided to get it out, release this memo that says, by the way, this is what investigators have been telling our colleagues who covered this case for years. There is no client list. There's no there. There's no further reason to charge anybody else. But for the Trump Justice Department to say that, knowing there was going to be this kind of blowback, I give them a little credit for that. But Dan Bongino is off the reservation, and there's some indication Kash Patel may be as well, although they're both in different situations. Dan Bongino, we don't know his motivation, but we do know that he made a living as a conspiracy theory podcaster, and he's about to lose the audience that made him a rich man. And there's a moment of truth here. He could leave now and regain that audience if he sticks with this idea that there is no conspiracy theory behind the Epstein affair. He's going to lose that audience. And, Kash Patel will always be the former FBI director when he leaves, and former FBI directors tend to be able to make a lot of money. It's less true about the deputy director. And so Bongino may be considering that scenario right now.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who speaks into a microphone for a living, I'll just say that, seems like an easier job than trying to run the Federal Bureau of Investigation or be the number 2 there. Just if you're choosing which one's an easier path. Brandy, I want to, to this point here about this is so, there's both the hardcore MAGA folks who are obsessed with this. And then there's, as you move out to people that don't even follow politics that well, but do kind of know about it, think about it. Here's Laura Loomer, who has her own backstory and has said just wildly offensive and despicable things many times, has engaged in all sorts of conspiracy theories, but she's sort of very close to Donald Trump. We've got, they talk to each other, and here's her today. Kash Patel and Don Bongino should call for Blondie's public resignation today to save themselves, to also push for full transparency in the Epstein files, giving Blondie courtesy. Oh, she's calling her Blondie. Okay. Giving Blondie courtesy to resign is more than she deserves. Trump should just fire her. Why has this exploded in the way it has, as someone who's followed this for a long time?
I have never seen this level of just
incredible disarray within the MAGA movement. I mean, you know, you played a little clip of it at the Turning Point USA convention today, the summit today. People were lining up to call Steve Bannon part of the deep state. Someone called Donald Trump part of the deep state now. Like, people are just incensed and looking for a scalp. And, you know, the easiest one for Laura Loomer and for other people that you talk about, besides being blonde, which I take offense to, is the fact that, you know, she came and she really did a humiliating thing for the MAGA folks, which is to give them all binders and leave them at the White House and do this big photo op. And then, you know, once they opened the binders, they realized that was stuff that was all publicly available before. So she humiliated them. And so that's why I think a lot of people right now are really on Dan Bongino's side. Bongino has always been very much one of them. But the problem is, and I've talked to a lot of MAGA folks today, and the problem is let's say Bondi's gone, right? Let's say if Trump fires her or she leaves. Then what? What does Bongino do?
Right.
You're still tasked with, they want a scalp. MAGA wants a payday. They've been promised Hillary Clinton was going to be locked up forever. They've been promised Guantanamo Bay. This is their line in the sand. They are not budging.
I want to bring in Brian Tyler Cohen. I hope you've checked him out online. He's got a huge digital audience on YouTube, and for good reason. Smart and really part of the progressive movement of the left. We'll see what that's going to become. Brian, it's good to be with you. Why are you so interested in the Epstein situation? You, of all people. Why do you care about this story?
I know it's not usually my beat here, but I think it's actually the perfect instance to show what a con this has all been as far as these Trump supporters are concerned. I mean, these guys spent, whether it's Bongino, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Alina Habba, Donald Trump, spent all of this time promising their supporters something. They used it to gain power for themselves. And the moment that they're actually in government, that they have the opportunity to substantiate the very claims that they themselves were making, they immediately do an about face, leave their supporters high and dry. And it's the perfect microcosm for everything that they do, because Trump has promised so many things to his supporters. He's promised a healthcare plan that was cheaper and more comprehensive. He's promised an an infrastructure law. He promised a jobs boom, a manufacturing renaissance. They keep promising all these things. That was the first term. The second term, they promised lower prices for groceries, lower prices for eggs, housing, rent. The only thing they ever give themselves is a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. That's it. That is their priority. But they have to say whatever they got to say to string the rubes along. And this is the perfect example of that backfiring on them, because they found something that their supporters clearly care a lot about, and it's not going to be as easy for them to just pretend like there's no there.
So the opportunity is that there are people who are disillusioned, and therefore they may become a little bit more open to a different message. So you got to be in the business of better on the other side, because you're not going to shame them into wanting to vote for you. Like, see what you did with Trump? Now you better vote for us. That's not going to work. You never blame the voter. So then it gets into, well, what is the message that's being projected? I felt that this was a great opportunity. Horrible situation, but often there's opportunity. Attacks on the ICE agents was a chance for a Newsom, anybody, AOC, anybody who wants to be a leader on the big stage to come forward and say, no, this isn't who we are. And that's what we criticized about the extremists at the far fringe of MAGA. And none of them have taken that opportunity, Brian. I am shocked at the lack of coverage in the media, but also no lefty. AOC opened up her pie hole about Epstein, but not about the ICE attacks.
Well, I think that, politically speaking, it's pretty clear why. If you look at the new Gallup poll that was released today, Trump's approval on immigration is completely underwater. He's 35 to 62. There is a record high approval of immigration itself, 79 to 17 overall. 78% of Americans that responded support a pathway to citizenship. That's up almost 10 points from 2024. Only 38% support mass deportation. That's down 9 points from 2024. And so you look at these numbers, and it's clear where the majority of Americans are on this. And I think that's owed to a few reasons. As it relates to ICE specifically, I mean, this is the kind of thing that anybody in America would look at happen in another country and say this is clearly the result of some autocratic authoritarian regime run amok. These guys have no insignia. They're not identifying themselves. They're grabbing people and throwing them into trucks. They're effectively kidnapping people here. And moreover, this is not something that Trump had a mandate to do. He promised that he would be deporting hardened criminals. He's going out into fields, finding people that are picking the food we eat, harvesting the crops that we need for this country, going into construction sites and plucking people out of jobs where they're building the homes that we all live in. I mean, this is not at all what he promised. And so clearly, from a political perspective, there's no mandate for him to do this.
No, I'm with you. I'm just saying that you're blowing the advantage when you don't call out people who try to kill the agents enforcing the laws.
Look,
that's all I'm saying.
I understand that, and I'm not. The last thing I'm going to do is advocate for any violence on any side. So that caveat notwithstanding, but I do think that, you know, at least from look, these guys they're politicians first and foremost, and so if you just look at the numbers right in front of us, it's very clear where the wind is blowing.
I got you. I got to jump. Brian Tyler Cohen, you're always welcome to be here. People should check you out on YouTube. You got a massive audience for good reason. Thank you, brother. We'll be right
Chris.
back. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
So are there reasonable conclusions to be drawn here? And is this a messaging problem? Did they overpromise before they knew what the documents would show? Here to weigh in is Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch president, and Molly Hemingway, the Federalist editor-in-chief and Fox News contributor. Tom, here's what Kash Patel said about that Epstein client list shortly after he was nominated as FBI director. Watch.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list? Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Tom, he sounded pretty definitive there, so what changed?
I think they decided for political purposes they didn't want to include the individuals who are on these lists and put them in the public domain. And they were concerned that some of them may not have done something warranting the disclosure. I mean, that's the most charitable interpretation. You know, but there is a list. There's no doubt. I mean, they talk about in the memo they wrote, well, there's no incriminating client list. Well, what does that mean? I want the non-incriminating client list. And of course, a client list is a term of art, right? Where are his associates? Where is the list of contacts? You know, and we asked under our FOIA lawsuit, Pam Bondi, give us the documents that you say you were looking at. Give us documents about the release of these documents. You said the FBI was obstructing the release. They came back to us and said, we have nothing.
Molly.
Well, this is a proxy for what we've seen with so many big stories throughout the years where the American people just want to know what's going on with
whatever
assassination attempts, you know, whether it's the one in Butler on Trump or the one that was successful against JFK, the Russia collusion hoax, the situation with Epstein. Everyone understands that there might not be a, you know,
smoking gun.
Right, but no one feels very satisfied with the level of investigation that was taking place or the transparency. And it seems that the FBI and other government agencies care more about managing the narrative than actually just revealing the information that needs to be revealed.
And then we have interviews with former mobsters who actually was in the same jail as Epstein and had kind of a shocking claim. Watch.
Jeffrey Epstein would have to be a magician to try to hang himself in that cell. I was in that cell. There's no way there's nothing on the ceiling. The bedpost is this high. I couldn't even go to a restroom without them walking back and forth and having me on camera. You know, there's no way he committed suicide.
Tom.
You know, and Pam Bondi yesterday said that video they released isn't conclusive.
But it's a reset. That minute is a regular reset of the system.
And they're still looking for that minute. And to release video that doesn't show what happened in the cell isn't terribly persuasive. I'm not sure what they were expecting there. The fact is there are two competing forensic investigations, one by Epstein's family, which suggests that it was a homicide, and one by the examiner up in New York. He says it was a suicide. So given those issues, to say because the video doesn't show one way or the other whether someone went in there, to conclude, oh, well, there's nothing to investigate, seems odd. And they also said, we're not going to give you any more documents. And kind of with this, well, there are too many conspiracy theories out there. And I don't like to be dissed like that. And Americans, I think by and large, have questions about Epstein. And to be told that, you know,
he said that, I think Kash Patel made that point like a year before being nominated, but still, I mean, I think this all adds to the swirl of a bit of confusion about this and doubt. And again, the government only, I think, engenders trust among the American people with full transparency. So when Pam Bondi, and everyone knows how much I like Pam Bondi, I like her a lot. But when she says, well, those are basically never going to see the light of day. But who, was it downloaded child porn? Or were there individuals engaged in acts with children? That's the question, I think. And unless either of you know what the definitive answer is, I don't know.
I mean, they talk about 1,000 victims. I mean, so was Epstein the only victimizer for that number of victims? I don't think so.
Well, just again, in general, there has not been the appropriate level of information shared. We know that the guy, I mean, maybe he didn't kill himself, or maybe he did. Why? Why was he in prison? Why is Ghislaine Maxwell still in prison? Why are all these people talking this way? There's no way that we've gotten a clear enough explanation of what's going on. How did he make his money? How did he get associations with so many high-level people? People are willing to accept any number of answers, but they need to be treated like adults in the communications.
Well, this is a sticky wicket they have in front of them. Tom and Molly, both of you, thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Also breaking tonight, a feud at the Justice Department over the handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. A source tells Fox News tonight that the FBI Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, has not been seen in the office since Wednesday after a heated argument with Attorney General Pam Bondi at the White House. Our correspondent David Spunt has this story.
A verbal clash between Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino at the White House this week over the release of DOJ's Epstein memo. The two-pager out earlier this week insists the convicted sex trafficker and offender killed himself, and a client list does not exist after all. Fox is told by 4 separate sources Bongino is so upset about the rollout of the memo, he didn't show up to work on Friday in protest. One source says he hasn't been seen in the office since the argument with the Attorney General. Bondi teased the release of the Epstein material for months.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
But earlier this week when pressed,
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
The White House is defending the Attorney General. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, in a statement to Fox News, says the president is proud of Bondi's efforts, adding the continued fixation on sowing division in President Trump's cabinet is baseless and unfounded in reality. FBI Director Kash Patel staying silent in the matter, at least publicly. He's been criticized online, along with Bondi and Bongino, by Trump supporters who feel the administration is being dismissive and not candid about Epstein. A source close to Bongino says he's thinking about resigning over this memo rollout, although no final decision has been made. Meanwhile, sources close to Director Patel and the Attorney General say they plan to stay right where they are. Aisha?
Okay, David Spunt staying on top of this one for us. Thank you, David.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
Quote, how can people be expected to have faith in Trump if he won't release the Epstein files? That post by Elon Musk this afternoon gets at a serious question, prompted by MAGA fans, among others, after the Justice Department asserted in a memo that convicted sex offender and multimillionaire Jeffrey Epstein did not blackmail high-profile clients, was not murdered before he was found dead in his jail cell in 2019, and in fact had no client list. Despite the fact that the very same administration officials are now asserting there is no there there, many of them were the ones ginning up the controversy before President Trump was reelected and while they were in office. The Justice Department memo, first obtained by Axios, also comes 1 month after the billionaire Tesla founder took to his platform X as his alliance with President Trump dissolved. Quote, "Time to drop the really big bomb. Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason why they have not been made public," unquote. Musk deleted that post 2 days later, but the new memo has Musk posting this meme, among others. It's a guy putting on progressively more clown makeup with the text, "We will release the Epstein list. We just need more time. The Epstein list is on my desk. There is no Epstein list," with full clown regalia. The desk part refers to a February clip. The list is on my desk. A February clip from Fox that was played of Pam Bondi. Take a listen.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump.
But here was Attorney General Bondi earlier today.
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that.
Trump was asked about the memo today by a New York Post reporter, and he expressed indignation.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
Mr. President, the reason people are talking about this guy is because people serving in the highest levels of your administration have been talking about this guy for years and talking about how the Epstein list needs to be released. Here's then Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance in October 2024.
Everybody in politics has a vice that's much worse than alcoholism, is the way that I put it. But we
release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Here's Kash Patel on a podcast just over a year before he became FBI director.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Dan Bongino, a former Secret Service agent turned right-wing podcaster, is now the FBI deputy director. Here he is on his show in February. He was named deputy director just a few weeks later.
I'm not ever going to let this story go because of what I heard from a source about Bill Clinton on a plane with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not letting it go ever. Ever.
Bill Clinton's spokesperson released a statement in 2019 saying that the former president, quote, knows nothing about the terrible crimes. We should note the presence of one's name in the files does not mean they were involved in any way in sex trafficking or having sex with any of Epstein's victims. Here's Alina Habba, now interim U.S. attorney for New Jersey. This is her in February.
In this case, in Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking.
I'm shocked that none of that's been released. In February this year, Attorney General Bondi teased the imminent arrival of the Epstein files, and President Trump's eldest son, Don Jr., posted about the news, quote, LFG, an acronym for Let's Effing Go. A week later, the Trump administration invited a slew of conservative MAGA influencers to the White House, purporting to give them a first look at a batch of documents labeled the Epstein files, phase 1, but none of it was a smoking gun. The vast majority of the information had already been made publicly available. CNN's Evan Perez reported in March that Attorney General Bondi directed FBI agents, in some cases, to drop their work on China and Iran and focus on redacting the files before their release. Remember, Trump made part of this his platform. Here he is during the 2024 campaign.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you know, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
So what's really going on here? I mean, what's really going on? Well, experts such as our friend Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, who's been covering Epstein for years, say that the notion of Epstein having an easy-to-access client list is likely a red herring. And that's what the Trump administration is relying on, that there likely isn't a list per se. But they are also now relying on the fact that because it's MAGA influencers who often put forward so many falsehoods, legacy news media won't push the point, that while there might not be a list, there are certainly files that can be released. There's a trove of information that the Trump administration is right now refusing to share. Information that could well point to the powerful folks who availed themselves of the sex trafficking victims of Jeffrey Epstein. If you go, for example, to the FBI vault online, you can see that there are 22 files containing thousands of pages. Most of them are heavily redacted. Now, sure, of course, redact the names and identifying characteristics of the victims. But why not make the victim testimonies public? As Julie Brown points out, there's still so much we don't know from the investigations by U.S. attorneys in Miami and in New York, witness interviews in the U.S. Virgin Islands and New Mexico. Brown writes that there's still more evidence that hasn't been published, including, quote, Epstein kept video cameras in most of his residences, and Epstein's autopsy, nor the report of the investigation into his death has been made public. So while there may not be an official client list to be released, as the administration is now saying, there's a lot of extra information that is not being made public, despite Trump's Justice Department basically now saying case closed. This isn't going to go away.
And Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused. I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I've told you. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped? Yeah. Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? What? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff. Like, very dangerous.
Well,
I don't want a revolution, but if you wanted a revolution, this is how you would act.
All right, Jamal, what do you think hearing that from Tucker?
Well, first of all, Tucker is being dangerous by alluding to something like a revolution when we're talking about the MAGA people, because we know that MAGA forces have been willing to use violence in pursuit of their political aims. We saw it on January 6th. You know, Gretchen said something a second ago about is Trump covering for Pam Bondi, but the question also may be, is Pam Bondi covering for Trump? We just really don't know. Donald Trump has been very forceful. He's a great television performer. When the question of Epstein comes up, every time he dissembles, he attacks the reporter. Remember before, he'll release the UFO files, he'll release the JFK files. Will you release the Epstein files? Well, I don't know if we should, do that. Innocent people may get wrapped up in that. I just think something's going on here. We got to keep asking the questions until we find out what's really happening, and they should just release the files.
I mean, right. I mean, that seems to be the point, Gretchen. At this point, and this is something that has been spun up, right, by some of the very people who are now saying, I mean, when Kash Patel and Dan Bongino came out recently and tried to downplay the Epstein files, they were eviscerated by the MAGA base, right? And now this is putting the whole thing on steroids. Far-right activist Laura Luma, Gretchen, we know Trump listens to her. She has been hammering Pam Bondi on social media. She posted, how come we can't talk about what a dumb, lying bimbo Pam Bondi is? JD Vance, please encourage President Trump to fire Pam Bondi. She's a disgrace. So what do you hear when you hear this? I mean, look, Laura Loomer, we know, has had very specific, tangible influence on Trump on big decisions.
Yes, in national security, specifically in the last few months. I do think she has Trump's ear. So, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Trump seemed to be protecting Bondi today. But I think one other really important point is in this second administration, we have seen a lot of MAGA supporters of Trump come out and be totally against him on really big issues. And what I think is fascinating is that he can go after people who are in groups, like lawyers, like members of Congress. I'll primary you if you don't agree with me. But with these single influencers, he's not doing that. And I think that raises a huge question about whether or not he has the power to actually silence them.
Right. And Jamal, I guess the whole question is there really no there? Or is the question, who is covering up for whom?
That is the question. Listen, what is sobering is that Donald Trump, if this were normal times, Donald Trump, he's turned around on Ukraine, and there are people in MAGA who are upset about that. He was in this relationship with Elon Musk, who's now turned on him, who wants to start a party, and so that could maybe peel off people. Now we've got the Epstein files, or all these things that would normally take down a regular politician. Donald Trump seems to be able to survive these things. I mean, he's such a political force, it doesn't really matter. But what does happen is the people around him are the ones who catch the brick. And so the question for Pam Bondi is this going to limit her ability to either be an effective attorney general or to even keep her job as attorney general?
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of the set?
Yeah, sure.
Could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every year, every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Chris Cuomo joins me now. You're about to speak with Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark, about that DOJ and FBI report. Mark does not believe that Jeffrey committed suicide.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk to him. I've spoken to him before, and he wasn't really close with his brother, and I never knew how much of that was convenience because he didn't want to get painted with the same stink. But for him to hold on that he believes something happened to his brother, which is what he told me at the time, I want to know what his basis is. And look, the administration did themselves no favor here. Bondi saying, I got the list right here, I got it right here, and leading people to believe that. You know, now they reap what they sow. But look, you know how I feel about this. This is a grand distraction. It's just that it was so central to so many who are MAGA enthusiasts. And it's interesting to see, what is starting to splinter the fringe on the right. And that's what tonight's about.
Well, it was also central to several people who are inside the Trump administration right now. Dan Bongino, Kash Patel. Yeah,
but don't confuse what somebody says on a podcast with what they're going to say when they're going to be held accountable.
Exactly.
It's one thing when you're looking for clicks and following and to feed conspiracies and all these other things that make you money. It's another thing when you have to take account. Right. And that's why Kash Patel and Bongino and Bobby and all the other ones have really changed their tune.
All right, Chris, I'm looking forward to it. Have a great show.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you very much. Chris Cuomo here. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Welcome to News Nation, where right and left come to be reasonable. It's tough to do that tonight. We just finished celebrating our country, right? The birth of we the people. Not us and them, not me, we. But even on the 4th of July, we saw how weak some are making us. Why did the flooding in Texas immediately become a blame game on social media? What happened to just mourning the dead in a natural disaster? Spreading awareness of what is needed by the communities and how you can help. Just pulling for the rescue of the missing. Can't anything escape the prism of partisan advantage? Forget about me saying we're going to expose the game, see the game. Forget about the game. Feel the shame. This is disgusting. I don't even know if we're a country anymore. What brings us together? What is our common concern? We're just dueling factions of fanatics. There's no more of this. We're not a fist. We're just fickle fingers looking for triggers to pull, literally and figuratively. You got 109 or whatever the number is right now dead in Texas. The number's going to go up. 160 missing. How is this not just a point of empathy and sympathy? Children's dead bodies being recovered all day Saturday. And then this Houston pediatrician writes, may all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry. Are you effing kidding me? They deny climate change? I mean, since when is death not more important than your politics? Even if you think policy, decisions, rhetoric, leaders had something to do with the outcome, why does it become tantamount to that outcome? Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, I've been trying to get him on the show. Now I don't want him. Accurate weather forecasting helps avoid fatal disasters. That's what you say? There are consequences to attacking meteorologists? You really believe that that's what this was about? You really think that's what your constituents want? For you to take a cheap shot at dead kids to score points against Trump? Wow. And guess what? The Union for the National Weather Service, and they've been critical of Trump's cuts, and I'm not saying there's not reason for criticism, but it's about perspective. The union says there was adequate staff at the time in Texas, and meteorologists are not faulting the National Weather Service. They're noting that they began to escalate the flood warnings as much as 12 hours in advance of the floods. So shut up, Murphy. We have to see that the interests of the many are being held hostage by the obsessions of the few on both sides. They are killing us. One day after the floods, a name I wish I never knew, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, said that it was intentional, the flooding. It's the dangerous and deadly practice of cloud seeding. Only psychos play with this kind of conspiracy, in my experience. I can't believe one is a member of Congress. They've been seeding clouds for decades. Minutes later, this Republican congressional candidate posts fake weather, fake hurricanes, fake flooding, fake. I mean, man, you talk about pick-me energy. And if you think I'm taking it too far, okay, or that there's false parity, false equivalency, that needs to die. Okay? The constant division and extreme partisan hectoring and hostility is absolutely a catalyst for violence. Look at the recent attacks. The facts make my case. I don't care about your feelings. I don't care about which side is yours and that you've bought into this false investment of superiority over some other side because you think they're crap. They've all been politically motivated. Even as the floods raged and we were celebrating the 4th of July, just a few hours north in Texas, American young males and females, no yalla, okay, no beards and turbans and all the other silly stereotypes of bad guys, American-made terrorists ambushing an ICE facility in Texas. They were there to kill ICE agents on Independence Day. Look at this. Oh, but the college campuses was... These are here. This is what it is. This is what is driving the populism on the left. Americans acting like ISIS, wearing all black military style clothing, drawing the ICE agents out with fireworks and antics. And then when they came out, they had a guy positioned with an Armalite style rifle, shooting them, spraying bullets. They found the rifles, the clips, the body armor, the two-way radios, the Faraday bag, to block signals. This is it, man. This isn't some random thing. Fight ICE terror with class war. Free all political prisoners. Resist fascism. Fight oligarchy. Oh, where did I hear that before? Oh, yeah. The AOC and Bernie rallies. You're not blaming them? No, I'm not blaming them personally. I actually think AOC and Bernie both care about the middle class. I don't agree with their remedies. I think socialism is political suicide in a capitalist economy in America. That's not the point. They and others on the left fringe have ratcheted up the hatred for Trump and his administration and ICE and DOJ. And you know it. It's not just that they're bad policy, that they're bad moves, that they're bad appointments. It's that they're bad people, that they are immoral, that they are evil, that they deserve bad things to happen to them. It sounds more like they want to put down a rabid dog than that they have a political disagreement. And this is where extreme talk leads. Just like with Trump and other fringe fanatics trafficking in extremism. I'm not calling him a fanatic, but he has fanatics that hear what he says. I think the president is one of the best instinctual political animals I've ever seen in my experience. His ability to not just read a room, but read a reality. The grievance is real. He tapped into it. He knew what would make people believe, and he is doing what he told them and you that he would do. But the hot talk, the making everybody an enemy, it is making us crazy. The parties have been consumed by extremism. The system is toxic. Yes, they are the few, not the many. And if the majority would just come out and brave this situation and condemn it and say, we want reasonable. I'm going to reward reasonable. I'm going to shout down anything else. I'm going to tell you to shut up. It's not what I voted for. The extremists will become the sideshow where they belong. The best contribution Elon has made to this administration is pitching changing the political system to add parties. The two-party system is toxic and rife with extreme talk and tactics. It must be changed. And before you tell me again with the false equivalency, the Democrats aren't the same as MAGA. What Democrats? You mean the populist movement on the left that is the MAGA mirror? Where are the Democratic leaders talking about the attack on ICE? Where's AOC? Where's Bernie? You can't shut them up. But now they don't have anything they want to say, right? Why? Because it's all about advantage all the time, and they think if they ignore it, there'll be no connection. The talk is toxic. And this is not about denying the legitimacy of the outrage in America. All right? It is real, it is justified, and I believe it's getting worse. I get why many wanted Trump to do what he promised to do during the election, even if I disagree with the policies and the impact of the rhetoric. And there is as much righteousness coming at him as he is sending out. The economy is not as promised in large part because of what Trump has forced. And no, I don't measure our reality by Wall Street. Investors are still the minority. Main Street matters. People are suffering. Strong businesses that are small and that we need are being compromised. Deportations are way more than just scooping up bad hombres. The way they're doing it and where they're doing it and how often they're doing it has become aggressive and oppressive. It risks hurting communities and demonizing all when the problem is some. But using violence against the agents? ICE agents have been under constant threat this year. Assaults are up almost 700%. So, back in Central Texas, we see something that I see all the time, covering tragedies in this country. Worst of times brings out the best of us. And you're seeing that. The local community, the Americans that come from all over the country. One of my buddies here volunteered to go down and help FEMA stay safe while doing their job. But you have to look at the full scope. You got to see the people who are celebrating dead Trumpers. You got to see the people who are scamming, people whose kids are missing. Calling the families of missing kids, telling them they found their kid and demanding money to return them. Get pissed at that. Savage that. Savage the people who have forgotten their humanity, who have forgotten the only pronoun that matters in this country, who have forgotten the signature command, the golden rule as delivered by who we always thought was the president to kind of hold up as the first because he set the standard in Washington until Trump said that he's better than him. Be a country, that is all. You cannot look at what is happening and think that we are not killing ourselves. Now, let's deal with what matters as a function of collective concern. Who's being found? What is happening with search and rescue, and how much of it is now believed to be recovery? News Nation senior national correspondent Brian Enton has been in Texas covering this situation as it develops, and he is now in a very interesting situation, taking us to a big part of the reality. Brian, thank you for being there. What do you got for us?
Yeah, Chris, these search and rescue crews, they just cleared out 8 o'clock. They've been working so hard all day. It's hot. The conditions are terrible. This is the Guadalupe River. This is where they've been focused in this area, but we're about 20 miles from Camp Mystic, where those girls went missing, searching all the brush, pulling the trees back, pulling back the branches. They think that, there could be people in this area hidden beneath the water. And I want to show you, Chris, the water, when it flooded here, it was up over my head. This is a quarry. And the concern is that there could be people in this waterway. There's not normally water here. So what they're doing right now is they're pumping the water out. It's going to take all night long, but they're hoping to get the water out overnight, and then they can search the quarry. And they're concerned that when the water was rushing, remember it was 45 feet up, it was a tidal wave, that some of these people may actually be in this quarry right now, Chris.
I mean, they got to be somewhere, right, brother? I mean, and that is the, that is the horrid reality, is that they didn't just disappear. And of course, they're going to have another phenomenon that they're going to have to deal with down there, is that as the temperatures keep going up, Brian, they're going to have bodies that are there are going to start coming up, and they're going to start making themselves more apparent. So there's a lot of this story still left to tell. Thank you for being there. Send our best to everybody and let us know what they need, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, 161 people missing. I mean, it's a staggering number.
Yeah, no, it'll change, and you'll be there for it. Thank you very much. All right, so look, that's the job. Brian's doing it, right? And that's all that should matter. Not, this is Trump's fault, right? Oh, this is government. Government sucks. They set these people up. Government is another reason to get rid of that agency. So let's take a clear-eyed look at what happened here, what can be learned, and what doesn't matter. Let's bring in former Kerr County Commissioner Tom Moser, okay? He knows the situation. He knows the reality. In fact, they had a similar flash flood 8 years ago, and he actually had a fix in mind, but it was too expensive. And the president for the Austin Firefighters Association, Bob Nix. Now, he has entered the fray of controversy here because he accused the Austin Fire chief who happens to be black, of not sending resources fast enough, which he says cost lives. Nick says he is now being accused of making this a political MAGA stunt. Look, gentlemen, thank you for being here. I just want to talk about what matters and what we can learn here, and what we see. And Mr. Moser, you know it best because you lived it and you saw it from a leadership position. Are you surprised by what's happening here, and what is the message for you?
Chris, absolutely surprised. It'll be interesting to see somebody do a probability analysis on the probability of something like this happening. It's probably going to be 1 in a million or something like that. It'll be interesting. Somebody will do it. In 2015, there was a major flood event south of Kerrville in Wimberley, Texas, where a family perished because of high-rising water, and they were washed away in a rental home. We'd never had that, to my knowledge, in Kerrville, but after that event down in Wimberley, they set up an early warning system for the river rising and sounding alarms. I looked at that and took that idea and expanded on it, took it back to Kerr County and presented it to the other commissioners, city councilmen, and about 30 or 40 other people in the community, with an idea of setting up a early warning system for a major flood, not just something that is to be considered in the hill country, but a major flood. And
you there,
and
Mr.
we
Moser?
talked about that, and the community did not want. Yeah, the community did not
finish
want
your point,
sirens.
please.
Okay, I will. So community did not want sirens, so we had a plan and we executed what we could.
So just, Mr. Moser, just kind of at bottom, when you look at this situation, do you see this as a function of blame, or do you believe that this was a natural catastrophe, that no matter what you had, it was going to be terrible?
I absolutely believe the latter. It was a natural catastrophe, no matter what we did. Okay, could we have saved more lives? Perhaps, and probably so.
Mr. Nix, I don't know why I said, I want you to answer this question for me. Yes, the chief is black. Is that relevant to you in your criticism?
No, absolutely not. Nothing to do with it.
Well, then I apologize for making it a detail of the description. Not that it's, to be apologized for whatever race somebody is, but what is the issue for you with the chief?
We want to make sure the truth comes out. I mean, our chief, we're part of a Texas Task Force 1 that responds routinely across the state of Texas to take care of our broader community. And we are really the experts on swiftwater rescue in the hill country, including Kerr County. Our fire chief, under some misguided notion he's going to save money, put a no deployment order into the fire department where we cannot accept any deployments. And then when he was interviewed today, he said it was because he was trying to teach the bean counters that we need to get our reimbursements faster. He's literally putting lives on the line for no reason at all. And, our firefighters in Austin are some of the best boat crews and rescue swimmers in the state. We're all go. We'll put our lifeline every day to help citizens. And a fellow from the commissioner's correct. This is a once in 100-year event. But we would have been pre-deployed the day before water even hit, reconning the area, checking out the places need to be helped. And our firefighters were not allowed because the fire chief basically said from June 6th on, no deployments and don't even ask. And we turned down two assignments, and it's just I've never seen anything like this in my career. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris.
Bob, what do you think of the damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario? I know that first responders are ready to go. You are the angels among us. Nobody's going to dispute that point, certainly not on this show. But, if you put you guys out there and it's not worth it, it's a waste of money. If they put you out there and God forbid something happens, you shouldn't have been in harm's way. And that, the chief was in a no-win situation. Is that a fair defense?
No, because if he wouldn't have had the moratorium on deployments, We routinely say yes to these deployments, as we should, as part of our promise and contract to the state, that we deploy when they need us. And the way emergency service works, a lot of civilians may not realize this, but if you react to the event when it happens, you're 8 hours behind. So pre-deploying resources is a very common technique for rescuers to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been with you guys so many times, the different FEMA teams, and I get it. And I get that you want to be there so that you're not coming into it spontaneously and having to figure out your bearings and your logistics. I get it. I would just caution you that, you know, this is a sensitive time and everything's going to be received that well. But I didn't mean to make it about race unless that's what you wanted to do. And you made it clear
absolutely
that that's
not. It's not about race, not about politics. Like I agree with everything you said earlier. Not about race. Not about politics. It's about letting us do our job and make sure we can do what we can do.
I got it, and I understand the concern, and the best of the brothers. Tom, let me ask you something real quick before I let you guys go. You've been in the community, you've been around the political dynamic for a really long time. Have you ever seen anything about how quick, no matter what the situation is that happens these days, even in what's happening in your little community, how fast it goes to left versus right and wrong?
I haven't seen anything left or right in this thing, Chris. I just say it's a tragedy and everybody came together. No indication to me whatsoever of left or right.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for the perspective, Bob. I appreciate you making the appeal. We're a call away if we can help either of you. Thank you very much. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. I mean, I really hope that, one, you're paying attention, and if you can help. I wouldn't suggest going down there. It's dangerous, and they're overwhelmed, and the communities can't handle it. And I know a lot of people want to help. Think about your wallet. Think about doing it 2-3 months from now, because that's when everybody goes away. And I'm not yelling at you because I think that you're bad. I just know that we can be better. I know we can. And we got to stop letting the few compromise the many, all right? And I want to talk about what we just saw with the growth of extremism and fundamentalism in this country, and that's what it is. When you see those 10 faces that look like they could be your kids, they could be my kids, they should be on a college campus, they could be, but instead they're trying to kill cops. That's where we are in this country. Tell me I'm wrong. Listen, I got to tell you, if you want to have the fight, I'll have the fight, okay? If you want to try to tell me that you believe that you somehow represent something more pure when, if you're on the left, you just had 10 young people try to kill ICE officers because their policies suck, because the way they're doing it is wrong, and this is something you want to get behind and say, yeah, well, but? What but? What are you, nuts? If you want to have the fight, I'm here for it. Okay, because these fringe people on either side, you want somebody to take you on, I'm here for it. Because you're killing us with your crazy. What happened with these kids, these young people, I'm old, everybody's young to me. This was planned, it was organized, they baited, they picked the date, they were heavily harmed. I'm telling you, this could just have easily been an ISIS operation. And we would want to kill an entire country again. And yet now, This is no big deal. This is no big deal. I want to bring in two guys. I want to bring in Victor Avila and Phil Mudd. Phil Mudd, you know, he's a friend of mine. He's taught me so much over the years as a former FBI and CIA counterterrorism big shot. And Victor was a Homeland Security supervisory agent. Victor, it's good to see you again. Thank you, Phil, for coming in right after the holiday like this. First of all, you know, Phil, you would tell me, am I wrong, or is this exactly fruit of the poisonous tree that we're seeing with these people? They look exactly like the Mangione guys. They look exactly like the MAGA mirror movement on the left. I mean, what's your assessment?
It pains me. I mean, it's not the same numbers, but this is sort of January 6th on the left. Let me give you why I would say that. In the past, when I grew up as a kid, Chris, you wouldn't know what somebody at the table believed. Democrat, Republican, you wouldn't know. You look at what happens in the world today. The Republicans viewed the Democrats, and the president said this over the weekend, as enemies. The left views the right as fascists. So when you start transitioning from political partisanship to telling your audience that is people like this, that the adversaries are enemies, that Republicans are enemies. There's a certain percentage of that population that commits an act of violence. Let me close by saying my big concern as someone who was involved in investigations here is this is a small corner of Texas. This is 10 people who are on social media. Multiply this by 50 states. I don't know how many counties there are in America. And I can tell you that the FBI has a problem, not just looking at January 6 people, but looking at people on the left who believe now this is the appropriate reaction to the new presidency. This is sort of partisanship turned to enemies in America, and this is the result, Chris.
Crazy white people, Victor. That's what we keep seeing. Crazy, and I'm not trying to absent them from criminal responsibility. I don't think that there's any insane. There may be sickness, but we keep seeing it again and again. When do we wake up to this reality, and then what do we do about it?
It's sickening for to say the least. And I know this personally. My partner and I were ambushed. I know what this is about. And listen, this is politically motivated. This is the rhetoric from the left and the narrative that they've been spewing for the last years. Remember the abolish ICE movement years ago? It hasn't stopped, and they vilified law enforcement officers that happen to investigate immigration violations. So police officers pull you over for speeding all the time, and you don't see people going after personally to that police officer. But when it comes to the ICE agent, they're being doxxed, they're being attacked because they're doing their job and upholding the duty and the oath that they swore to do. This is intolerable for me, and I want to hear. I haven't heard any Democrat come out and condemn these actions and ask for it to stop, because it's about enough that we had about this. The last thing I want to see, Chris, is another ICE agent killed in line of duty because of these wackos.
You know, Victor got shot, for you guys at home. He was shot 3 times. And he survived it. I don't like bringing it up every time I have him on because he's a lot more than just what he survived in that one experience. You know, his head is just as valuable to us as what his body endured. But Victor, people should know that. Phil, listen, man, you know, I get why this is dicey, and you don't have to own it. This is my perspective. But this is what I've been talking about. That, you know, these faces to me tell the story. This is who's coming at me online. These are the ones that are making the videos. And look, if these were a bunch of MAGA people, I think there'd be probably more male to female ratio, but that wouldn't surprise me either. We're creating our own enemy structure here at home. This is not Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the bad guys. We're worried about Iran and their proxies. Why do they need proxies? We're ready to kill ourselves.
I think that's right. And I think, let me be blunt, that the responsibility starts with leadership. There has been responsible leadership in this country. Look at the right. People like in my lifetime, the recent lifetime, Mitt Romney. If you look at conservative Democrats, if you look at Joe Manchin, for example, somebody who's regarded as a fringe of a Democrat, when I was in my 20s, he was viewed at the core. When fringe people in both parties start to characterize others as the adversary, this is what you're going to get. So I think you're right in characterizing this not as fringe, Chris. This is not fringe. This is starting to transition to the core of America. Mm-hmm. This is what a lot of people believe. When I run every day, I live in rural America in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I see a bumper sticker every day that says F Joe Biden and that says F you if you voted for him. My partner saw a bumper sticker today that said F Donald Trump and F you if you voted for him. You would not have seen that 30 years ago. You see it today. Mm-hmm. Leadership is a problem. They cannot say these things. They will lead people to do what you saw in Texas against ICE agents.
Yeah, and of course, look, Victor, you know this. Them saying, oh, this was wrong. Listen, it's not about saying it's wrong. We all know it's wrong. It's that the language you use and the imagery you use and the messaging that you put out there make this logical. It makes it that MAGA is afraid of people who are coming into the country, that you believe that if you are MAGA, that you want to destroy the country and you're a fascist and you want Trump to be king. That's the crazy. It doesn't matter what you apologize for. All right, gentlemen, I got to jump. Victor, best to you and the family. We'll continue this conversation because we keep killing ourselves. So I'll talk to you in probably a week or so. Phil, God bless and be well. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. And what am I supposed to say? Oh, God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen again. It's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. Why? Why wouldn't it? Who in power is fighting to make it stop? Who's showing us a way that is better? Who's giving people a reason to believe in anything other than blood and vengeance? You tell me. You tell me. So that takes us to the Epstein files. Categorize it under C for crazy. But it was a big deal for MAGA. You look at people who have feelings about the vaccine, feelings about the deep state, and Epstein, and they checked every box. Now what are you supposed to do? Who do you believe? I'll tell you who Epstein's brother believes, not the government. The problem with playing with conspiracies is that at some point, you're either going to have to put up or shut up. And now that the Trump administration, even though Bongino and Patel and others really trafficked in the Epstein files, right? And the assumption was that something was done to him, and it's because of the lists, what he had around him. And then the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, claimed months ago that they were going to release tens of thousands of incriminating documents. Remember, she said, they're right here on my desk. And then it never came. And then this past Sunday, right, and that's an intentional day, right? We don't want you really to pay attention. Trump's DOJ and FBI released a memo saying, no client list, no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. And he killed himself, period. This is exactly what so many in MAGA did not expect to hear nor want to hear. So let's discuss on the political and the personal side. We got Liz Wheeler, conservative commentator, host of the Liz Wheeler Show, absolutely invested in this and expected a different outcome. And joining by phone, that's the only way he does it. I've spoken to him before because he's afraid that people are going to come after him because he's Epstein's brother. Mark, who does not buy the DOJ's findings that his brother committed suicide. Liz, it's good to see you. Mark, thank you for being on the phone. Liz, Bondi says they're on my desk. Now she doesn't really seem to have a good answer. Did she mean the client list was on her desk, or was that just something figurative? How do you explain this?
Well, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, said today herself that that's not what she meant when she said the words, the client list is on my desk. But you heard the words as well as I did. She said the client list is on my desk, and that wasn't true. So it's a little hard to square what she said then with what she's saying now. That's the biggest problem with this whole story, Chris, is that people voted for President Trump because they wanted justice. We want justice. There was a lot of wrongdoing that was inflicted on the American people under the previous administration, both by Biden staffers and by deep state government bureaucratic employees. From Russiagate to the impeachments to parents being called terrorists because they didn't want critical race theory or trans ideology being taught to their children, to January 6th, to there's all kinds of different ways that MAGA, you can call President Trump supporters, anybody who dissented from Biden, were abused by the Biden administration, by the intel community, by the FBI, by the DOJ. And we voted for Trump because we wanted justice. And justice involves actually holding accountable the people who committed that wrongdoing. So now we see Pam Bondi. I was at the White House that day when Pam Bondi gave out those white binders. I was one of the ones who received that binder. So when you say before I'm invested in this, yeah, I am invested in this because what she did made me look like I was adding to some kind of clickbait weirdo influencer thing online, which I don't do. People that watch me know I'm very prudent. I don't engage in hot takes. And I gave her the benefit of the doubt. You give the benefit of the doubt to people on your own side. I thought, okay, I don't know why she gave us those binders if she didn't have good stuff in those binders, but she said there was another story. A whistleblower told her there were truckloads of documents. Hopefully she'll produce. And I gave her time. I was patient. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But here's the thing, Chris. That day in the White House, Pam Bondi bragged about making that cover sheet on that binder that you're showing on the screen. That cover sheet that reads the most transparent administration in history. Epstein files phase 1. She told us she made that. She printed it. She put it in that binder. How can you square that behavior with what she posted on the Department of Justice website on Sunday saying, actually, there's nothing here. All the things, all the incongruencies in the narrative that you've pointed out, that you've observed with your own eyes, it's not true. And we're not providing any evidence to you to show you that what you might have believed is not actually substantiated by evidence. You're just supposed to take my word for it after she had told us something different multiple times. This is why I've come out and said President Trump shouldn't tolerate this kind of behavior. Pam Bondi has become a liability to him because people care about this story. They care not so much because they care about the Epstein list itself, but because they care about justice. That's what they voted for. They voted for justice. They voted for transparency, and they're not getting either of those things with this kind of unforced error from Pam Bondi.
Oh, I don't think it's an unforced error. I think it's absolutely intentional. And they believe that you guys will just shut up and go along with whatever they say, and we'll see how it plays out. But Mark, for you, it's personal. This was your brother. And just so everybody knows, Mark wasn't part of anything that his brother was doing in this regard. He's never been connected to it. There's never been a suggestion. It's not about that. But Mark, you do not believe what the administration, the Trump administration, is putting out about your brother now. Why?
Well, every time they say something or do something to try to quash the fact that he was most likely murdered, they just put their foot further down their mouth. I mean, for instance, Kash Patel in the Congressional hearing, he listed his credentials as a prosecutor and other such things, and he said that it was a suicide. He said, you know a suicide when you see it. That's basically what he said. So the questions that popped into my mind was, first of all, number one, how many suicides has he seen? Number one. Two, is he a forensic pathologist? Does he have a medical degree? Does he have a certificate that he passed the CPR course? Does he have a Boy Scout merit badge for first aid? What is he basing his expertise on? Contrast that to Dr. Roman, who was a city pathologist who did the autopsy. She came out of the autopsy and said she couldn't call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. Dr. Michael Baden, who was there on my behalf, who witnessed the autopsy, also concurred that it looked more like a homicide than a suicide. Now, was Kash Patel in the autopsy room? No. Was Kash Patel in the prison when they found Jeffrey? No, I don't think so. And if he was there, that raises even a bigger question. So every time they say something, I mean, when Kash Patel came out with that statement, I laughed at how stupid it was. And then they just released this video. This you're going to like. After the death, a few days after the death, Bill Barr, the Attorney General, said he saw that video and he saw that nobody went in or out of the tier, and that convinced him it was a suicide. And I heard that and I realized how stupid that was, because no one could get to that door, go in, kill somebody, leave completely undetected. That's like an asinine concept. So if Jeff was killed, he was either killed by somebody on the tier or when they locked up the tier. So that's one part of it. Now, I asked to get the footage from that same camera under Freedom of Information Act from 10 o'clock the night before until noon the following morning. That would show who locked up the tier, who were the last people on that tier. And in the morning, it would show, Michael Thomas going in the guard and finding the body, and it would show what the situation was when they removed the body from the tier. I was initially told I couldn't get that footage because it was still an open investigation. Okay, I understand that. But then when the investigation was over, I asked for that footage again, okay? And I was now told that the cameras that were operating don't show that area.
That's right.
I have this in writing from the Bureau of Prisons, that the cameras that were operating
I remember.
And I was very specific about the footage, the same footage that Bill Barr saw.
No, Mark, listen, I get it. I get it. And the transparency wasn't there. And then they said that there was a malfunction. Then they said they weren't coordinated. And look, I get why you guys are upset about what's happening here. But I can tell you this, it's not over. And it's not about what I think or don't think about the situation. That's not relevant. The process isn't over. Liz, thank you. We'll be in touch whenever you want. You know how to get me. Take care. We'll keep talking. Mark Epstein, we're always a call away. All right?
Thanks,
We'll
Chris.
be right back. All right. So it looks like there's a change in the state of play with America's disposition towards Russia. Used to call Putin a great guy, smart guy, great leader, so strong. Now he says he throws around a lot of BS and he thinks he just wants to kill people. My question is, why did America stop giving aid to Ukraine and then all of a sudden turn around and decide to give more? And the president says he didn't know who made the first decision. Really? Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine is Bill Taylor. Bill, I give you the time in this segment to explain what you think is going on and what matters.
So, Chris, what matters is that the United States and the U.S. president has now figured out, has now understood that Putin is not his friend, that Putin is the obstacle to what he's trying to do. President Trump, to his credit, has said since the campaign he wants to solve this problem. And he's, give him credit, he's been trying. The problem is Putin. The problem is not Zelensky. The problem is not the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are defending themselves against that aggression from the Russians. And President Trump has now figured it out, that Putin is the problem. And so what he has to do, what President Trump has to do is put pressure on Putin, which he can do. Senator Graham has a sanctions bill. President Trump has now decided to send more weapons. That's going to be pressure on Putin to come to the table. That's what needs to happen.
Well, Bill, I don't understand what happened, though. Who cut the aid, and was this just a political gambit to make it look like Trump was providing more after it had been cut off? And isn't that a gap that costs lives?
It certainly costs lives. There's absolutely no doubt that it costs lives and will cost more. But I don't think it was a conspiracy, Chris. I think it's more chaos within the administration. One hand not knowing what the other is doing, no one claiming credit for that cutoff. It was so interesting to see Secretary Hicks sitting right beside the president at that cabinet meeting when he said he didn't know who had cut it off. So I think what we're seeing now is a realignment and an understanding and a focus on who the problem is. The problem is Putin.
Mr. Ambassador Bill Taylor, thank you so much for your perspective and doing it succinctly. I appreciate you, and we'll speak again. Take care. We'll be right back. Look, I don't like the way the government's handling, the Trump administration's handling the Epstein stuff. But look, this is what you get when you play with a conspiracy for advantage and bash the government. When you use the Epstein conspiracy to say that everyone in government is a liar, and now you are in charge, and you wind up now wanting to tell the truth and say, oh, there was nothing to it, you are now going to be hoisted on your own petard. You're going to be blown up by the same thing that you were trying to use for advantage. That's why this is happening. Where I don't see any kind of explanation that is satisfying is these two fringe movements on either side owning that they are making people violent. Who will be the first to be better? Because right now they are both desperate to be worse. Leland Vittert starts right now.
You really don't think there's more to Epstein? Come on.
I think that there is plenty there, but when you play with fire and say, they're not telling you, but I would tell you, I would, and then you get in there, and now just like with the Kennedy files, it starts to get a little bit more complicated. Now you become what you fed them in the first place, which is someone who can't be trusted. So I don't have any sympathy for them being in this spot.
Well, I don't have sympathy for any politician in any spot. That's sort of our job. But 40 years later, right, we find out, or more than that, 60 years later, we find out that there was CIA people following Oswald from those new documents. So what, 60 years from now we figure out with Epstein?
No, because they'll have a new one. You know what I mean? The best thing that power has going for it is time. Is that, the more things happen, the more you can escape, any accountability unless it happens in the moment. And that's why we got to keep our eye on the ball.
This time yesterday, literally 24 hours ago, we were watching the following out of the White House cabinet meeting where the subject of Jeffrey Epstein came up, and Donald Trump injected himself into the exchange, which was meant to be between the New York Post reporter and Pam Bondi as follows. SOT 1.
Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for an American or foreign intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, can you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape?
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Okay. Trump himself promised full transparency on the Jeffrey Epstein case when he was running for president. This has been a big issue on the right. My friend Dan Bongino was one of the people who made it a big issue. So did Kash Patel, talking about it over and over and over again. It is just not real for Trump to pretend he's shocked this is still an issue. Nothing's been resolved. Nothing's been released. He promised transparency, as did his attorney general. And then they release a memo saying you're not getting anything. It's over. Just trust us. And that was not real. Trump pretending he's shocked that people are still interested in it. Your take, Mark.
Well, let me first talk about that soundbite and then the bigger issue. So I'm a student of Donald Trump and how he handles public appearances, as are you. And I don't have the world's most sensitive spidey sense, but I got some spidey sense. That he regularly says, I don't like that question, does it all the time, but that was with a purpose. Okay, so I don't see how anyone could look at that and not see an attempt by the president to intimidate the press from ever asking again about it. That's how I read it. Mm-hmm. What are the arguments against withholding? What are the arguments for transparency? MAGA really wants it. I keep a running list here of all the news organizations on the right and individuals who are demanding transparency still. It's a long list, and it includes many people who are typically automatically supportive of the president. So MAGA wants it, his base wants it. 2, it's the right thing to do for the victims and for public trust. 3, as you said, the president supported this on a regular basis. And 4, they said they were going to do it. So there's a credibility issue. So all those things would argue for disclosure, transparency, release. What's on the other side? I pause pregnantly. What's on the other side? What's on the other side is the suspicion that this is intended to protect rich and powerful men. So I think that this could go either way. The news cycle could move on. MAGA often will pick fights with Donald Trump and then move on. They're a resilient group. So this and the press corps, the dominant press corps, the so-called legacy media, they have for years, and they're continuing now, to be remarkably uninterested in what is both an important and interesting story, something the press corps normally covers. Okay, so I think it could go either way. This could disappear, and those who don't want further disclosure could have their way / get away with it, or those demanding justice and disclosure could get their way. I don't know which way it's going to go. But again, I'll go back to the first thing I said. That was a remarkable performance by the president.
It was an obvious attempt to deflect and to set the messaging like we're not talking about Epstein anymore, period. Right. And I'm the head of MAGA, and that's what I say. But it's too late. That animal has already been created, and it's pretty ferocious. It's not going to be tamed just by one line from the president at a cabinet meeting. He helped create it. He helped inspire it. His top lieutenants helped create it. And we too have been watching the reaction amongst the most, faithful supporters of the president. We put together a budded soundbite. In this, you'll hear names you'll hear from names that you know. The only one who doesn't seem to be demanding more is our friend Ben Shapiro, but you'll hear almost a uniform tone from literally almost everyone else on the right. Take a listen.
Nobody told us prior to this that the Epstein files would be anywhere even on the agenda for that day. And it was really sprung as a surprise to all of us. We get handed these binders, and then before we even have a chance to look into them, we're hauled out actually in front of the cameras that were all there. We don't have the accountability that was spoken of. We don't have the releases that were spoken of. And it's indefensible. It's indefensible that the answers aren't there when so much was promised.
As someone who voted for the president, campaigned for the president a lot, I'm not attacking the president, but I think even people who are fully on board with the bulk of the MAGA agenda are like, this is too much, actually.
Yes.
I'm saying that with love, and I hope that they're listening, because I think this threatens to blow up the whole thing. By the way, when Pam Bondi went on television and said, I have a videotape of kids getting abused, I followed this case closely, and I know a lot of the people involved, as I've told you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I didn't know that. Really? Thousands of children got raped?
Yeah.
Who raped them? Where are the rapists? Like, why aren't they in jail? This is the Department of Justice.
Yes.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just think it's very dangerous to play around with this stuff.
Can't the Department of Justice move to unseal things that this could potentially be brought to the public? Because I think we need mass disclosure. I think we need more information. At least for my under 30 crowd, I know my demo, they are volcanic over this whole thing. And by the way, the over 60 crowd, they're like, Epstein, whatever, not a big deal. No, but under 30, can you explain that to our audience too, Mike? The hyper online under 30 crowd, this is a major, major issue.
If you're willing to throw that over and claim they're lying, then I'd like to see you present your evidence that they are in fact lying. Because I know Dan. I don't think that Dan Bongino is lying to me. I know Kash Patel a little bit. I don't think Kash Patel is lying to me. I don't think these people are lying to me. Which means that if somebody else continues to claim that they're lying, they ought to provide their evidence at this point.
Pam Bondi needs to be fired. Who is rolling this out? The little rascals? Panky, look, I got some videotape. What are you doing? This is ridiculous.
Really interesting, right, Mark?
Yeah, every time I see Ben Shapiro, I think maybe I should adopt more of his voice for my show. I feel like he's onto something with that voice. As you and I have talked about, Charlie and Tucker are extremely influential with the administration. And when they say not just the morally right thing to do, but the demand of the base is more disclosure. And then, but Ben gives voice to the reality for some, which is Pam Bondi's taking a lot more heat than Kash Patel and Dan are, a lot more. And yet they're out there with more specificity saying, trust us, case closed. So I'll continue to watch to see how they handle this. The president endorsed them on True Social the other day, not specifically on this issue, but in general.
Not her.
But not her. Although he was pretty friendly in the cabinet room.
But he knew she was twisting by a string, and he did not send out a nice tweet about her.
Now you didn't include Laura Loomer in your mashup.
Could have.
She is much derided, obviously, and there are people in the White House who don't like her influence, but she doesn't lose that often. She doesn't lose that often, and she's very hepped up about this. But I'll say again, there's a lot of
she wants Bondi fired.
Yeah, there are a lot of MAGA obsessions that aren't necessarily in the public interest or aren't rooted in truth, justice, and the American way. This is a real thing, and Tucker, I think, gave voice to it. Like, forget the conspiracy theories. Just deal with the reality of how this man was treated by the criminal justice system, and how discouraging that was, not just to the victims, but to people who believe in justice and people who believe in the American system treating people fairly. Like, this requires extraordinarily detailed care and disclosure. And the administration, after championing it and after knowing full well how important it was, as Charlie said, to so many of Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, is basically saying, trust us, case closed. And it could sustain, but I don't think it will. And I don't think it should, because imagine the status quo and what that will do to people's lack of trust in the government and in and commitments that have been made.
Listening to the theorizing around it has been fascinating. Just this morning, I was listening to Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, and also just very bright social commentator. And he was saying, let's just say, without evidence, he was very open, but this is just a theory. Let's just say that there is some Israel connection with Epstein. Like, he was an agent, something, collecting compromat on various people. Mm-hmm. And he went to Trump and said, you got to make this go away. And Trump went to Bongino and Patel and Bondi and said, for the sake of peace in the Middle East, we're moving on. There's nothing to see here. And that's what I want you to say. Would I consider that a lie I couldn't forgive. That's a Scott Adams still. No, I wouldn't, he said. The president, this is total speculation, but the president going to those three and saying, it's over, I don't care what you say, but you have to make it go away, we're moving on, would explain the way all three have behaved over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. Again, if they're telling the truth and they really believe that the right thing for the world is to say there's nothing to see here, didn't commit suicide, wasn't murdered, didn't have a list, nothing more to disclose that would be good for the public to know, then they're doing a crap job explaining why. They're doing a crap job giving us confidence. There needs to be long interviews, long press conferences, not just a statement and not just short disclosure. And they need to walk through it all. Pam Bondi yesterday says, well, there's a minute gap every day. Maybe, but minute gap is something that, is not going to go away without a really clear explanation. And
she dropped that like it was a nothing. Everybody was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's real? The minute before midnight thing is real? And you thought you were just going to get away with it?
Every night. On Next Up, there's a minute gap every episode where I tell my best jokes and the producers cut them out.
And someone winds up dead, FYI.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what? Wait, what?
Someone dies at the end of every episode. Again, the Mossad thing in my world, the Mossad thing's very big as a matter of speculation. But the other speculation is, as my friend Dan Turntine says, Donald Trump, has deep affiliations where Jeffrey Epstein did in South Florida and on the Upper East Side of New York City. And so maybe he's trying to protect friends. Now, some people say he's trying to protect himself. No idea. But as I said before, there needs to be an explanation for what they're doing, because all the equities, all of the logic, all the doing the right thing falls on the side of disclosure. So if they're telling the truth, if they're confident that there is nothing more to disclose that would be in the public interest to know, they need to do a better job of walking us through that and not just saying to reporters, how dare you ask?
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898 and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
This is truly unusual breaking news. You know the breaking news animation. You know sometimes the news is big, significant, serious. This one is unusual. A major escalation in what is increasingly a kind of political, quiet, peaceful civil war, but a civil war of political proportions for MAGA over these Epstein files. And it's roiling the Trump administration at quite literally the highest levels. Sources detailing the ongoing clash over a fight that could cost someone their job. Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi clashing with the FBI number 2 official Dan Bongino. As everybody who follows these kind of stories knows, technically the AG oversees the FBI, but if you remember Comey or other strong-willed FBI officials, when you're at that number 1, number 2 level, they sometimes fight with the DOJ. Sources say Bongino is so upset about all this, he's saying maybe he'll just leave, which would be a very quick tenure, by the way, and he would be leaving in a sort of protest or criticism of Bondi's handling of the Epstein files. Other outside agitators, including Tucker Carlson, saying she's lost confidence, maybe she has to go. He was not at work today, reportedly. Sources also say Bondi and Bongino got into a heated clash Wednesday in a high-level meeting with him, her, FBI Director Patel, and Donald Trump's number 1 person who tracks all this stuff and makes the big staffing decisions, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, who, of course, also ran the Victoria's campaign. Axios has a report on this where Pam says her piece, Dan says his piece, didn't end on friendly terms. Bongino left angry. And you don't need to be a scholar of reporting or Watergate level intrigue to know somebody in this small meeting is leaking this stuff to Axios if it's true. A source close to Bongino saying he ain't coming back. Out of control furious is the other quote. This destroyed his career. He's threatening to quit and torch Pam unless she's fired, said someone who, again, according to that reporting, spoke with Bongino. By the way, hire podcasters and right-wing media figures to run major parts of the government, and you may find major parts of the government are being leaked on and run like another piece of podcast content. I'll come back to how some of this does swirl around MAGA content. Other parts of it, of course, are serious when you think about the victims in the original Epstein case. All of this, though, occurred because the DOJ has fallen short of the pledges that people around Trump, including Bondi, made. There were many questions about the Epstein case. From the moment of his in-custody death, this news program, for example, has reported on those questions. There are some suspicious details. This news program has not done what a lot of the internet and MAGA right-wing sort of circles have done, which is assert without evidence what maybe happened and then wait for the government to confirm it. Now we're seeing significant backlash from MAGA, probably some of the loudest against Trump since he took office. Journalists, other people following Doge and Musk may be reporting one set of problems to the administration, but on the right, this is the big problem. All of this is because it was partly stoked by the very people who now say nothing to see here. They stoked this conspiracy which imploded on them.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now.
In Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
What names are in there, man? You understand how many powerful people probably want this thing to desperately go away?
The FBI airmailed into that operation and said, this is not getting out. Because they do that because this is another government gangster operation.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Release the list. That's the now vice president. The list's on my desk, the attorney general. The government gangsters, quote unquote, are in charge of all this stuff. The problem is they caught the car. All those people talking up that way now have the goods. They're in the government. They used to be pointing their finger. They found it pointing at themselves, like many an old internet meme, and it's blown up on them. So this matters politically because one or more people may be out of a job. It matters in a deeper sense because we're seeing the limits of governing by clickbait or political conspiracy theory. It also could matter if any of it got back to the real questions about the Epstein case, not whether Pam Bondi was lying when she said she had an Epstein list or is lying now when the memo says it doesn't exist, but can't be both. Now, in the FBI, there's a wider dysfunction involving some of these same people who we know from what they're saying have been spending many, many days, a lot of their energy on a client list they now say doesn't exist. But the Times is reporting that the FBI is taking the unusual step of using lie detectors for loyalty tests, subjecting personnel to questions as specific as to whether they've criticized or, quote, cast aspersions on Patel, who you just saw in that other clip talking about gangsters. This looks like something from a movie or another era, but according to the Times, it's happening. And in Trump's DOJ under Bondi, there's also a purge because there are officials who say they might be targeted not for how they're doing their job, but whether they're insufficiently, quote, politically loyal to Bondi and Trump. Fired without explanation, a culture of fear is how the Post describes it. And so one more point on all this tonight. What started as a very real question about a suspicious in-custody death. Any journalist or lawyer could tell you the government's holding a high-profile detainee and they die under suspicious circumstances. You want to investigate that. What started with something real morphed into a MAGA conspiracy theory that was sold so hard by these leaders that it's blown up in their face. And more than almost anything Trump has done thus far in the second term, and you follow the news, you're familiar with it, this is the thing saddling Trump. This is the thing that has them leaking on each other, fighting with each other, talking about not coming back to work, all because the story they sold themselves blew up on themselves. I want to bring in our experts, Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times and MSNBC analyst, and Alencia Johnson, who worked on the Harris 24 campaign and wrote Flip the Tables, Everyday Disruptor's Guide to Finding Courage and Making Change. Plenty in there for the times we're in now. Welcome to both of you. Michelle, multiple things can be true. We're all for investigating and holding the government accountable. If there were problems in the original handling of Epstein, it stretches from the Trump folks who were in charge of the Bureau of Prisons at the time. If there was further cover-up or lack of transparency, that would include, of course, the ensuing Democratic administration, and now back to the Trump folks again. So there may be good questions to ask, and yet so many of the questions that have blown up in their face seem to be of their own making. In Bondi's case, saying things that she would know to be untrue.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I should say I don't really have very many priors about this. I'm inclined to believe that if there was evidence that Epstein was murdered, or if there was evidence of a so-called client list, given that we've had first Trump in charge, then Biden, now Trump again, there would be somebody who had the incentive to leak it or to put that out there. You know, that said, there are, as you said earlier, there are a lot of weird things about this case, including now the changed metadata on the tape that they put out. But I think the key is two things. One, that Pam Bondi has made these statements that can't be reconciled. Either she was lying outright and kind of getting the MAGA people's hopes up when she said, I have this list on my desk, you know, or she's lying now when she says no such lists exist and there's nothing there. And I think that part of it is that there's a difference between someone like Pam Bondi, who could have been a Republican official in a lot of different administrations, and someone like Dan Bongino, who is purely a creature of the MAGA world, would never be in the FBI under any other president, and then sort of has no political or entertainment future if he is seen by the MAGA base as a traitor. You know, Pam Bondi is more of a sort of Bill Barr figure. And so they might all despise her. But if they feel really betrayed by Dan Bongino, who I think probably was a true believer that he was going to come in there and they were going to have this cathartic exposure of all their enemies, you know, if he's now seen as being part of a cover-up, I think that's much more of a threat to him personally.
Yeah. I appreciate that breakdown. That makes a lot of sense. Alencia, I want to play the MAGA meltdown over this. For folks who aren't constantly watching The War Room or Tucker, you maybe only have heard some of it. But again, I don't think it's an overstatement that they're more upset about this than most anything that's happened in these first 170 days. Take a look.
Don't tell us all this stuff's coming out and the investigation's massive and that Trump wants it released and then say, oh, there's nothing there.
This stinks. This just reeks.
Pam Bondi needs to be fired. Who is rolling this out? The little rascals?
So I'm going to go throw up, actually.
That is so crazy. This is honestly one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
This seems like unforgivable behavior.
For them to do something like this tears my guts out.
Alencia.
It's giving Real Housewives of D.C. and a really nasty reunion. But, you know, it's interesting. Your lead into that was the point that I've been thinking about. There have been so many egregious things that have happened in this administration from, you know, we see unemployment having gone up under this administration. We see this horrible bill that happened last week. We see what is happening with these ICE raids, all of these things that have happened in this first 170 days. And this is the thing that the base is literally crying over on television and on video. And so it will be interesting to see how, moving forward, the administration actually starts to bring in some of these MAGA loyalists who, quite frankly, are these conspiracy theorists that they would campaign with, right, in 2024. They brought them into the administration, and now they are infighting, and it's leaking out publicly. Is that continuing to erode the trust that the MAGA base has with the Trump administration? And I think it will. It will. Now, I actually don't have a lot of empathy for a lot of MAGA supporters because we've been here before in his first administration, right? He'll make one promise and then go the complete opposite direction. He continues to spew conspiracy theories, or people in his cabinet do, but yet that's actually not enough for people to pump the brakes. And the people who can pump the brakes are actually the people.
Let me jump in. But on the politics, you ran with Harris, 1.5 race, right? Had it started earlier or different things happen, 1.5 in politics, that's not a Reagan landslide, right? Things can shift. Bannon says, whatever you think of him on the politics, that if they continue to mess this up, they're going to lose 10% of their base, which in a general election, quick math, would be a 5-point swing. which is pretty striking about how big they think the issue is. Take a look.
For this to go away, you're going to lose 10% of the MAGA movement. If we lose 10% of the MAGA movement right now, we're going to lose 40 seats in 26. We're going to lose the president.
One Republican congressman predicted back in February that we'd never learn the truth about what really happened to the disgraced pedophile.
What are we going to learn? Just today, the FBI found 1,400 new files. Now, I don't know. They're as crooked as a dog's leg, as we say in East Tennessee. I don't trust any of them. I don't think we're going to get, I don't know. No, just no.
Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, member of the House Oversight Accountability Committee, joins us now. The confident smile of a man who can say, "I told you so," is what I see on your face, sir.
I don't take any pleasure in it. I want to bury those dirt bags, but I'm afraid I was right. I've seen too much of it. And every time they're supposed to release something, they never do, whether it be UFOs, JFK, RFK. This is just, it's the nature of the beast up here.
Who are the dirtbags?
I think your second, third level tier people that are in a lot of these departments that we never get to. You have staffers and things like that on the Capitol Hill that leak things, that stop important pieces of legislation. And I just feel like you've got to, I guess I'll write about it in my book if I live to tell that day. But I think the files existed at one time. I think they were destroyed in the previous administration. And I think if they'd ever had anything on Trump, it would have been out day one. Agreed. Under the Biden administration. And I think there's some very prominent people. There's Hollywood people, but I think there's world leaders too. And would it have caused economic disruption around the globe? Maybe. But I don't really care. I want to. You think there's a theory?
Is there a theory, perhaps, that none of the, or not none, but maybe some of the people on the list didn't do anything wrong, and this would be a terrible guilt by association to put their names out, just to put everybody's name out? No one's been charged with a crime. Put all these people's names out, and suddenly, because they had an interaction with Epstein that was completely benign, they're labeled as one of his buddies?
What's Miss Maxwell doing in jail? What did she do? Where is that? Who did she provide whatever she did? Why is she in jail? That's got to be a question that should be asked at some point. But again, under the previous administration, we're not going to get that. Dead men tell no tales. He's dead. And
well, I just want to be clear what you're saying. Are you saying the previous administration destroyed everything, or are you saying that the Trump administration is basically doing the same thing as the previous administration?
No, I think they destroyed everything. I think.
So why wouldn't Pam Bondi say that?
She doesn't have any proof of it. I'm just telling you what I think. I mean, I've been around this town enough. I don't think I think she's got over her skis pretty much, saying all this stuff. The files are on my desk. I'm going to release it. And then she releases stuff that I knew, so I just don't think, I think they all got out there, got a little excited, and I don't think they exist. And that's my currently. I think they did it. I think they did it one time. You got an administration that lied about it, said Hunter Biden didn't, his laptop, that didn't exist. That's Russian. You had 30 of the
I get all that.
Intelligence people in the country say that, and they didn't get chastised by anybody, but y'all and a couple others.
No, look, we chastise everybody equally. It's why we appreciate you being willing to cut. Yeah, you know that better than most. But I want to play for you Bill O'Reilly on how he sees it. Take a listen.
Okay.
I talked to President Trump man to man, eye to eye,
on St. Patrick's Day about this and the Kennedy files and the King files. It was all one conversation. And he said, and I agree, there are a lot of names associated with Epstein that had nothing to do with Epstein's conduct. They maybe had lunch with him or maybe had some correspondence for one thing or another. If that name gets out, those people are destroyed.
So his theory is kind of the same as what I just put out. The flip side of that is that he also said that this is going to hurt Trump because Trump promised this, Pam Bondi promised this. They made a big deal about it in the campaign. And now there's nothing to see. You agree? You seem upset.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I just don't think they ever had it. I think they were told they had it. And again, this is a bureaucrat deciding what you and I can handle. And I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I think they could release it and say these people were not considered conspirators. I mean, they were not conspirators. They weren't considered pedophiles or involved in anything. They visited. They flew on. I mean, Trump flew on his plane, but that's just because it was on the manifest. But he didn't fly to freaking pedophile island. He flew from like Florida up to New York, and that's what rich people do. I know rich people that do that all the time. There is a difference, and I think you could make that designation
between different people. I agree with you on this. What's missing from the Epstein files? Thousands of pages of investigative documents, video and digital evidence. Who knows what actually the client list was, whether there was a list or they'd have to come up with a list based on everything else. The victim information and the evidence of broader blackmail schemes. Also, why people gave him so much money to manage when he was, by all accounts, a pretty sort of average to poor money manager is something that's out there. This now from our partners at The Hill. Democrats gloat as MAGA world explodes over Epstein files. Democrats are also exploiting the division to advance another unfounded theory that Trump won't release the files because he's featured within them. But more importantly, the fact that there's this big division in MAGA world over this, what does that say to you?
I think there's a division, but of course the Democrats in the Hill are not on our side. They're going to stir everything up, just like Elon Musk. Now they're their biggest fan because he's starting some crazy third party. And so, I just don't buy that. I don't buy that. You've got these news organizations and they're friends of mine, but dadgummit, come on. They're so far to the left, they come around to the other side almost. So I don't buy that. I think there'll be another bright, shiny object out there and folks will get distracted again. But again, this is what happens in a country where 12 to 15% of the people who are eligible to vote. You got to get educated. We got to get people in office that have some guts and have some moral that have some morals. And currently we're, I'm kind of in the minority in the not in the morals department, but just in the fact that, I don't come from money. The big boys hate my guts. They love me the day after the election. And I get that. I get that all the time. I'll never raise the money they do. I get the threats from leadership or people that associate with the leadership tell me that I need to calm down on stuff. And then I remind them, I say, well,
is anybody telling you, I got to run in a minute, but I want you to answer this for me. Is anybody getting on you about the Epstein stuff? Were you ever told to pipe down about that? Are you being told now, let's just move on from this?
Yeah, but here's how it works. I've had them come talk to me on the floor about things, and we'll just leave it at that, things. And I said, well, it's the truth though, right? And they said, well, yeah, it's the truth, but you just got to quit saying it. And the way it works is kind of like I've had this stuff happen to me. It's kind of like
sounds like the mob or something.
It's Washington D.C. Are you paying attention?
There's some similarities.
But no, but no. I'm walking down the hall. I'm walking down the hall, and a member that I know who's a friend tells me, hey man, do we really need to dig into this? Don't you think you need to maybe back off? And
that's how it works.
Not random. That's how it works.
No, it's not. That's how it works. And we always appreciate you being willing to come on and talk about it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
We all know what the Trump administration did this week. Now we're getting dribs and drabs. And by the way, I said about 18 months ago on this show that people would be hearing from Jeffrey Epstein. And then I made clear he's not alive. I was never suggesting that, but I knew of tapes of Jeffrey Epstein that would get released. And let's just say I stand by my story. I mean it still 100%. Just stand by, okay? By the way, some already were released right before the election that were largely ignored because it was right before the election. But they're not done. There will be more. And you can trust me. Trust me. I don't say things I can't back up, okay? So that's happening. In any event, back to the actual substance. There's a clip of Alan Dershowitz that's gone totally viral. It was from an interview he gave Sean Spicer back in March. I'm going to play it for you. I'm going to update it for you. And then we're going to talk about what, if anything, it all means for what we're supposed to believe about the FBI's files. Here it is.
So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
Just out of curiosity, without names, are these politicians, business leaders, both?
They're everything. And let me tell you, a lot of them are, at least one of them is somebody who was accused. Others are accusers. And the judges have said, if somebody calls themselves a victim, we're not going to give any information about them. But they may not be victims. They may be perpetrators. So we don't have information about false accusers. And we know there have been many false accusers who have accused innocent people for money. And those records are being deliberately, willfully suppressed.
Very interesting. Everyone, that's sort of a Rorschach test for how you feel about this case, because people who believe the FBI is withholding names of like a pedophile ring focus on the first half, and people who don't focus on the second half. We know Alan very well. We covered very, very closely Virginia Giuffre's accusations against him. He came on the show when it was in its infancy, and we did a very deep dive into all of it. Alan has been totally exonerated on those accusations. He disproved this woman's accusations with actual receipts and plane tickets and so on. None of it held up. And ultimately, not surprisingly, she withdrew her suit against him and confessed she may have confused him with someone else, which is the best you're going to get as a guy who gets accused in these cases falsely. But we reached out to him about this soundbite, and he said, I did not talk about a client list. He said to us, let me tell you what the situation is. There are redacted statements in the FBI's file by the accuser, the same woman who accused me, Virginia Giuffre. In her statement to the FBI, she never mentioned me because she never heard of me. She didn't know me. But in the statement to the FBI, she did accuse a bunch of other people, and their names are in the report. But the report has been redacted. That's been censored, kept secret. I've seen it, however. I do know who's in that list. And I know a couple of other people who have been accused as well. I don't know whether or not they actually did anything wrong. I know they were accused mostly by the same woman who falsely accused me. We're talking about Virginia Giuffre. And one of the things that's been suppressed is all the information that is negative to the accusers, the information that proves the accusers made up the stories. So it's much more complicated. There's no client list, he says. There are names of people who are accused, and there are names of people who falsely accuse them. That's all there is. It's a redacted FBI report in which Virginia Giuffre names people, and I know who the people are, and the court has kept the list secret and has refused to unredact the list. Okay, so what he seems to be saying, guys, is it's not just Alan who was accused by Virginia, or Prince Andrew who was accused by Virginia, or Epstein who was accused by Virginia. The list goes on. But that, and there appears to be more than just Virginia as an accuser in these files. But she's got a very sketchy history with the truth. She's recently deceased. But there's no question Virginia lied about Alan. And I'm sure she did lie about others. And so he's basically saying the so-called files are more ambiguous than people who believe there's a mass pedophile ring would want you to believe. And Alan believes it should all be released, and that these other guys who get accused in these files should have to defend themselves the same way Alan had to by, disputing each charge. He doesn't like what's happening with either a court holding back redacted documents or the FBI just sort of saying in a sweeping manner, there's nothing to see here, move on. Viva, I'll start with you on it, and then I'll get to you, Dave.
Well, we're using this term client list in a very, convenient manner where it either has a strict definition that can be weaseled out of. So they say it's not a client list. I think everybody understands what is meant by the client list. Unindicted co-conspirators or the actual clients of Jeffrey Epstein, not as said by Pam Bondi en passant for a Fox interview, as put to a letter that she signed to Kash Patel in February 2025, where she says, I've got a list of Jeffrey Epstein and his clients. That's what people want to understand and want to know here. Not whether or not there's a mass pedophile list and yet a client list. Here's Mr. Jane Doe's favorite, person, whatever. They want to know who was involved in this sex trafficking ring that involved thousands of people, that spanned decades, that warranted him setting up cameras in his island so that he could capture videos, not of himself only with these ladies, with these women and girls, but the people who went to his island. People have been told for years that there were unindicted co-conspirators, that there were other people involved in the sex trafficking. You don't go to jail for sex trafficking to nobody but yourself and then come out later and say, there is no client list, there is no unindicted co-conspirators. And when Pam Bondi wrote in a letter that we have Epstein and a list of his clients, that she didn't mean a list of his clients. So whether or not it has the title client list, people, I say not have been led to believe, it only stands to reason from everything that we've known for the last decade plus. Other people were involved, as Dershowitz says, either as false accusers or as accused, because Epstein wasn't doing this for himself. The videos that they had at his place that they seized were not only of himself, they are ambiguous as to whether or not it was child pornography that was downloaded or produced. And now they just want to sweep it under the rug with an unsigned, undated memo uploaded to the DOJ after it's leaked to Axios. Don't expect anybody to believe that.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yes, I have a lot of respect for Professor Dershowitz. He was my law professor, and you don't have to just trust or believe him about Virginia Giuffre's credibility issues, because prosecutors felt the same way. That's why she was not called to testify in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And so, yes, she did have credibility issues. And as far as what's still out there, one thing that I'm interested in is what's on the thumb drives that were taken from Jeffrey Epstein's apartment on July 6th and 7th of 2019, when the authorities raided his place and had to use a saw to get into his safe. And they recovered a bunch of thumb drives. It's not clear whether the contents of that have ever been disclosed. And as you correctly
Sorry, just
said,
to confirm what you said, Dave, because I lost it. Did you say at his place in Florida or his place in New York?
New York. This is from New York.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, there was a safe there, and they had to use a saw to get in it, and they recovered all these thumb drives, and it's not clear whether that's ever been made public. They found cash, diamonds, and passports, and these thumb drives. Now, part of the problem is that you're dealing with, as you correctly said, judges who have put a kibosh on it, as well as a decision by the FBI. I think the FBI's decision is more discretionary because they are trying to protect names of victims, child porn, and all these things that they don't want disclosed. If there are names of individuals who are directly tied to this, then it should be disclosed. And even if there are names of people who are affiliated, like in the Black Book, who are not part of Epstein Island, I think the public is sophisticated enough where if you release everyone's names, they can sort out who was part of the pedophilia ring and who just was an associate, someone who knew Jeffrey Epstein. Just because you're in his Black Book, just because you knew him, doesn't mean you're a pedophile. But I think the FBI and the Trump administration is being very careful about that. They don't want to tar people who are not guilty of any crimes, and perhaps the president himself is concerned himself being mentioned in that same category, even though there's no proof he committed any of the crimes. So I get why they're very careful, but until you be more transparent, you're going to have all these questions out there and all these bloggers, and Viva is right to ask these questions. And so they're going to have to do something because this story is not going away.
Mm-hmm. There's a woman, I want to make sure I have her title correct. Her name is Sigrid McCauley, and she's an attorney representing people who are suing Epstein's former accountant. This is one of the last Epstein cases that's in federal court. She went on News Nation, spoke to Elizabeth Vargas, I think on Wednesday. And here's what she said. Take a listen to SOT 4.
What's really just astonishing about this recent disclosure from the government is that they know they are sitting on a treasure trove of information and they're not turning it over. And I've worked on these cases for over 10 years now. There's a plethora of information that the public has not been able to see relating to Epstein and his co-conspirators.
What kind of information?
All kinds of information. I mean, certainly if you look at what the government recently disclosed, the first time Pam Bondi came out and gave us some information, you'll see a list where they took multiple computers, multiple items from the houses. You know, what was on those computers? The public has not seen that. What do the financial records tell us? Do they tell us that money was being given to him by certain individuals, that money was flowing out to certain individuals? All of that is critical for the public to be able to know.
That was a very good last question there, Viva.
It's that people were involved in this. And we know that video was seized, and now we're led to believe a decade later it was only child pornography and only for Jeffrey Epstein's personal pleasure. I mean, it doesn't pass the smell test. And it's not to hold people to their statements before they were in office. I happen to personally believe Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, what they said for years, what Kash Patel said very recently, December 2023, there's a list. Bill Gates, you don't think Bill Gates is lobbying, the government to not release the list? The bottom line is, who went to the island? Why was Ehud Barak visiting Jeffrey Epstein 30 times after he was a known convicted solicitor of child prostitution? Ehud Barak's explanation, I didn't know that he was convicted. My goodness, I do background checks on babysitters. I don't believe that the former prime minister of Israel didn't do background checks on Epstein. And we're sitting here after years and decades of this. Trump promised to, declassify the information. You have Bindergate. You have Bondi on letters saying a list of Epstein's clients. Then you have the Bindergate, which humiliates a bunch of influencers. And then we're told phase one has now turned into nothing. Go home. There's an unsigned memo saying it was all conspiracy, and anybody perpetrating or perpetuating this right now is doing a disservice to the victims and the government. I mean, I don't know how you expect people to believe that, even if it's true. 10 hours of footage of a cell, and we still have questions as to whether or not it's even the right cell, is not going to confirm that Epstein killed himself. And even if you have 10 hours of Epstein's cell showing nobody went in and checked on him every 20 to 30 minutes, a man who was on suicide watch 20 minutes earlier, itself is a conspiracy. So, being told to sit down, be quiet, and stop asking questions is itself a conspiracy.
What do you make of that, Dave? I mean, I know you've been somewhat defensive of Pam Bondi, who you know as a former Florida attorney.
I believe she misspoke, and I think I believe her when she says that what she was referring to was the file was on her desk, not a client list. There is no evidence that there is a client list, the list of all the Johns out there. I mean, if that existed, Ghislaine Maxwell would have given that up in exchange for her freedom. There's been no evidence. And I also looked to the reporters who were the first ones, the Julie Browns, who helped break this story again, at least put it back in the public's consciousness. Tara Palmieri and others who are close to it, and they have said there is no client list. So there's no evidence of any client list. So I think that the sin of the administration perhaps is trying to appease the conspiracy theorists. And now when you're in the role of being in government, you have a different role than you were when you're a blogger. When Bongino and Kash Patel were out there blogging, yes, you can help perpetuate conspiracy theorists. But when you're in charge, you got to deal with facts, and they're dealing with the facts.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation. just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.
Today, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino apparently did not show up to work. And at this point, we really have no idea if he will be back at work on Monday, as I was just saying to Chris. And if not, whether he's gone for good or whether anyone else from this Trump-era soap opera will be exiting with him. Who knows? We'll see. And if there's anything we learn over the next hour, and you never know, we may, we will be sure to let you know, I promise. And we don't know exactly where Dan Bongino was. We do have a pretty good sense of why he went MIA. And before we get into all the nitty-gritty here, and I know you've probably been following a lot of it, but let me just say this is a very messy, dysfunctional MAGA family drama. It involves hurt feelings and big personalities, and I would say some important lessons about what can happen when you're in a party with a growing addiction to conspiracy theorists and making sure they love you. So I just want to go back to the beginning of the second Trump administration, because it's important here. I mean, the MAGA faithful were eager to finally get their hands on all the secret Jeffrey Epstein files that they had led themselves to believe were purposely being hidden from them, from all the evil people in the Biden administration, I suppose. Files that they were convinced would implicate members of the deep state in child sex trafficking and in murdering Epstein to cover it all up. That was the theory, right? And one of the people Trump appointed to a major role in the FBI was this guy.
Hear about this Jeffrey Epstein thing? That apparently 170 plus people on his client list may be outed in the coming days. I can't wait for that. I've already told you the Epstein story. Let's just say a friend who knows about something, if you've heard the story, was on the plane with Clinton with the Epstein thing, and he said, I'm out of here, Daddy-O. I told that story quite a few times, so I know a lot about this story. There are a lot of people who know old Jeff. A lot of people. So it's kind of weird, like this client list is about to come out. Everybody got quiet all of a sudden about the Senate sex tape scandal, and nobody wants to say anything. Quickie poll. You believe some members of Congress and the Senate may have some connection to the Epstein client list? A simple Y for yes will do. No, if you think, no chance at all. Somebody have something on them? Is that client list going to have some names? Guess we'll see.
So that little hype man for all the conspiracy theories has found himself to be the deputy director of the FBI. Now, just a couple weeks into Trump's new term, back in February, Attorney General Pam Bondi handed out binders labeled The Epstein Files Phase 1. You can see one right on the screen there, nicely labeled with a little cover sheet, all to MAGA influencers at the White House. And she also told Fox News that the Epstein client list was literally sitting on her desk. So conspiracy land had their hopes up. They were pumped. They were finally going to get access to this stuff. Then that leads us to this week, when it all fell apart. When Bondi's office released a memo stating that Epstein had killed himself in his prison cell and that his long-awaited, much-rumored client list did not exist, effectively shutting the case down. That memo, to say the least, was not received well by MAGA world and prompted a good portion of Trump supporters to basically lose their minds.
I said Epstein, like, where did this guy go? Where did that whole case go? Where did all the files go? They just went nowhere? No one even believes that.
Do you buy this story from the Justice Department? I do not.
It's almost like the Justice Department doesn't want us talking about Jeffrey Epstein anymore.
So we're stupid. Yeah. we're the idiots, guys. Just to let you know, we're wasting time. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. That is, like, in all seriousness, that is, I think, what is enraging people right now is it's insulting our intelligence. Like, obviously, the intelligence community is trying to cover it up. Obviously, the Trump administration is trying to cover up. Something changed because they ran on this idea of exposing it all.
So now, by coming in and being part of the cover-up, the Trump administration has become part of it. I mean, it's just you cannot see it any other way. I mean, I'm physically gonna puke probably right now. My mouth is watering right now because I haven't